Matt Fraser is the founder and chief product officer of HWPO Training and a retired professional CrossFit athlete. Matt's mantra, hard work pays off, guided him to become the most dominant and successful athlete in the history of CrossFit. And that mantra continues to drive him today in his business endeavors. In his competitive career, Matt earned 5 consecutive CrossFit Games titles as the fittest man on earth from 2016 to 2020, and he finished on the podium 7 consecutive times starting in 2014. Prior to CrossFit, Matt had a successful career in Olympic weightlifting. He won his first national title at the age of 13 and became the junior national weightlifting champion in 2009. Matt was also a resident athlete at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Since retiring from CrossFit in 2020, Matt has been involved in numerous business adventures, and he also coaches and continues to lead and support his HWPO training community. He's a true inspiration, and it's an honor to have him on the show. Welcome, Matt, and thanks for joining us on Life Excellence.
Thank you. That was quite the intro. I appreciate it.
Well, you're definitely deserving of an introduction like that. Matt, I know you were athletic almost from birth. Tell us what it was like growing up and how athletics and fitness was ingrained in you at such a young age.
Yeah. Growing up, I grew up in a very active household. Both my parents are former athletes. So they grew up, they were a pairs freestyle figure skating team. Senior world champions 4 times. They went to the 76 Olympics. But by the time I came along, sports wasn't a day-to-day practice for them. They had moved on to different things but we were always very active. So my dad always kind of had those party tricks, like the handstands, walking up the stairs, stuff like that. So we were always kind of playing around with that, had a trampoline, skiing, water skiing, all that type of stuff. So very coordinated, and good sense of where my body was in space. But in terms of your typical baseball, soccer, I think I played those when I was young, like elementary school. But by the time I hit middle school, I had found weightlifting. I liked the independent side of the sport. I didn't really care as much for team sports at that age. So I found weightlifting when I was 12 years old. So very, very early, and it took priority for me almost right away. So, I did some other recreational sports. I played football through high school, but that was more just time with friends. Weightlifting was always my primary sport. And then, graduated high school, moved to the Olympic Training Center, and just started competing right away.
What surprised me when I was reading about your weightlifting career is not that you were involved in weightlifting, but how early you started. And you won your first title at the age of 13.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about lifting that really clicked for you? And how did that evolve into competitive weightlifting?
I'm sure there's a couple. I'm sure there's not one singular thing that kind of hooked me on weightlifting. But kind of more the perfect storm of a bunch of little things. I become interested in weightlifting because when I think I was in 6th grade, I was 12 or 13 years old. I was a heavier set kid and just finally got tired of being picked on. So I just was like, I'm done being the fat kid in class, and just started working out, like cut back my calories, ate nothing but, chicken, tuna, spinach, old treadmill down in the basement. And I would just go run for an hour or do push-ups, sit-ups, lost a bunch of weight. I started training with the high school football team in their weight room when I was in middle school. And one of the coaches actually pulled my dad aside when he came in to pick me up. And he was like, "Hey, I think your kid likes weightlifting more than he enjoys the football side of it." And he was like, "There's a guy in the next town over who knows what he's doing. He knows the technique for proper weightlifting. You should take your kid over there so he can learn how to lift properly." And that was kind of the beginning of the end. My dad and I jumped in the truck. It's a 10-15 minute drive to the next town over, and we didn't know where he worked. We didn't know what school he worked at, so we just went to his house, and we met his wife, and it was he coached weightlifting every day after school for free and on Saturday mornings. And so I think it wasn't quite what I was expecting. I wanted to just load up the heavy weights and lift as much as I could. He forced me to lift on a broomstick, work on the technique. So I'm sure it was a little bit of the delayed gratification. It was a lot more on the mental side. It's not just about physical strength. It's very much about like coordination, timing, speed, and the big overarching is technique, which is kind of more like a game of chess, making sure everything's perfect on the way up. And so I think that hooked me a little bit. And then I'm sure the fact that I was 12, 13 years old and there were some cute girls in the gym kind of kept me around. But then funny enough, and it's more common than not, typically the two best weightlifters out of one specific gym will be in the same weight class. And it's held true for every gym I've trained at. The number one, number two ranked in the gym, they're always in the same weight class. And I think that just comes from the daily competitiveness of like you're training with a competitor, so you're always a little bit more, ready to deliver, ready to push the intensity a bit. And I was fortunate enough to have that same situation. The kid get in the weight room. He was the same age, same weight class as me. And so I think every day there was a bit of friendly rivalry, friendly competition going on. So I think a combination of all those right away, I think that's probably what got me hooked.
And so you certainly had a successful career as a junior weightlifter. When did CrossFit come into the picture, and what eventually inspired you to compete in the CrossFit Games?
Yeah. So the beginning of the end of my weightlifting career was right around I think the tail end of 2008, beginning of 2009. I broke one of my vertebrae in two spots, my L5.
Ooh.
And so, obviously, it took me out of competition, took me out of training. I then had to, seek out a surgeon, find out what surgery was going to be the best. And so, I got linked up with the doctor out in California that did an experimental surgery. He basically told me, he's like, hey, I give it a 50-50 shot of working. And but the reason I went with him was he was the only doctor that gave me the possibility of returning to sport. Every other doctor told me, you're done, you're never working out again. The best you'll ever be able to do is maybe a light jog. So 18, 19-year-old kid pursuing the Olympics, that kind of takes the wind out of your sails. But I found the surgeon out in California that did the surgery. And so right around then, started focusing on school a bit more. So that's when I transitioned from the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs to the Olympic Education Center in Michigan, and made a full recovery. It was about a year worth of, rehab and rebuilding back up to getting back to the competition floor. And then I competed for another year, but there was a huge shift in that time where I started training just in a bad mood all the time. I was training based off resentment. That was my primary motivation. Was with that injury, I heard how many people kind of wrote me off, just saying like, he's talking about me like I was broken goods, and it just didn't sit well. So I had a chip on my shoulder and had a lot to prove. And so that's what I did. But that association going into the gym every day in a bad mood, just kind of killed the love for the sport. So competed for another year, hit a pretty good milestone, one that I've been chasing in the sport for a while. So it's a 300 kilo total. It's not anything to write home about, but it's what I was chasing for quite some time. And hit that, kind of just said like, I think I'm done with weightlifting. Lived life pretty normally for a little while. Got a job out in Alberta, working in the oil fields. Was planning on moving back to Vermont to go to UVM. Did that and just went from training twice a day to nothing. I wasn't working out. Working out wasn't a part of my daily routine. I did it just for competing. So it wasn't like I did it just for the health and fitness benefits. It was only for competing. And yeah, so once I was in school, there's just kind of a void. I started gaining a bit of weight. Something was missing, and I literally Googled CrossFit near me. And because as weightlifters, when you need to train and you're not in your home gym, you can drop into most CrossFit gyms, and they just kind of welcome you in with open arms. So you can use their bars and bumpers, and so that's how it started. I literally went in CrossFit near me, found Champlain Valley CrossFit. Um, 15 minutes away from me, and just showed up, introduced myself, and it started as just doing weightlifting in the back. I had my weight set. That's kind of what I knew. That's what I was familiar with, and so that's what I would do. And some of the other members of the gym who were competitors kind of saw what I was doing, and I think they got a bit of a kick out of it, of like getting me to try CrossFit things. Because I was great with a barbell. I was very efficient. I knew how to move the bar as close to perfectly as you can ask. And then because of my parents' kind of active background, sports background, I was good at some of the party tricks. Like I could walk on my hands, I could do a standing backflip, I can, do some of these odd things without practicing. And so some of the other competitors were like, can you do a muscle up? Can you do this? Can you do that? And one after another, I would kind of do them. And so that's how it started. Was I was just lifting in the back of a CrossFit gym, and then the owner of the gym was hosting a competition. He signed me up for it, and that was kind of I hit the ground running.
And so what happened after you started out going to CrossFit, really just to replace the void that was left because you had left weightlifting, competitive lifting,
Hmm.
really weren't doing anything, so you were looking just to find a place to get back into shape, and then you entered the competition. At what point did it start to pique your curiosity, or sort of hit that spark that this might be the next thing, or the competitive replacement for what you were doing in weightlifting?
Yeah, it was after the competition had finished. So after the award ceremony and all that stuff, and so coming from weightlifting, it's you do it for the love of the sport. You pay to play. You have to pay all your own travel. You know, you have to pay a coach. There's not a dime in the sport, or there wasn't when I was competing. And so then I do this in-house competition. It's at the same gym I go to every day. It's just a local competition, and I won some prize money. And so, full-time college student, and I'm burning the candle at both ends with university too. I'm doing a double major, double minor, and I didn't like having a job just because I was so busy with school. And so I just looked at it as, I won a little bit of money. I remember turning to the guy who hosted the competition, the gym owner. I was like, holy shit, like I've never made a dime weightlifting, and I just made like a couple $100 at this competition. And then it was, I'm sure I got some free protein, I got some free, like some clothes from a clothing sponsor or something. And it was just all so foreign to me. I'm working out in my dad's clothes because I don't have clothes. I can't go to the store. I don't have enough money to buy some like good shorts or something. That competition, I was using a friend's shoes. He was in a different heat, so like we would swap shoes in between heats. Um, so I just saw it as, this is a way that I can. It's not going to interfere with school because it's competitions are on Saturday, Sundays. I can make some pocket money just so I can keep focusing on school. I don't have to distract myself with trying to coordinate a work schedule and my school schedule. And yeah, so I remember after that award ceremony, I just went to Jade, the owner of the gym, and I think my line was, "Are there more of these, like these competitions?" And he was like, "Yeah, like every weekend." I was just like, "Okay, cool. Where do I find them?" And he gave me a website where every competition would list. A gym would just put up a posting of, "Hey, we're having a competition. We're opening up to this many people, whatever." And I would just call I would go one by one calling and ask, like, if they said that they were offering a prize, I was like, hey, how much is the prize? Um, and if it was over a certain amount, I would show up.
Was that primarily on the East Coast, or did you start traveling? How
It
far were
was
you traveling at that point?
all East Coast.
Okay.
I don't know if I was at the point quite yet of buying plane tickets, but I would find somebody else in the gym that was competing at the same competition, and I would be like, "Hey, I'll drive. I'll do the gas money if you get the hotel." So just stuff like that. Yeah, and they were all on the weekends. But yeah, I just looked at it as kind of like a side hustle of train my ass off during the week, take Friday off, drive down to the competition, compete Saturday, Sunday, try to get back. But yeah, it was all New England based. Yeah, I'm trying to think of where they were, like Connecticut, Massachusetts, stuff like that.
Yeah. I love this conversation, Matt, because I'm a huge proponent of health and fitness, and I don't compete. I don't operate at the level that you do, but I think both cardio and strength training are critically important for health and vitality.
Absolutely.
But you've obviously taken this to an entirely different level. Let's jump into the CrossFit Games and the training required to become the fittest man on earth. What
Hmm.
did a typical daily workout and maybe weekly schedule look like for you at the height of training for the CrossFit Games?
Yeah, so the schedule fluctuated throughout the year. So for anyone that doesn't know, I'll give a quick synopsis or quick summation of the season. So when I was competing, it was primarily three stages. There's stage typically February, March timeframe that's called the Open. So it's an online competition. Typically, it was 5 weeks long. They release one workout per week. So they release it on a Thursday. You have to complete it and submit your score and video by Monday evening, and then you're ranked based off that. From the Open, and I think at the peak of the Open when I was competing, there was over 400,000 competitors. So I'd go from the Open, then you qualify to regionals. There were 17 regions around the world. They take the top 40 men and women in from the Open to each region, and then regionals is a 3 day competition, 6 to 7 events, and then they take the top 1 to 5 from each region to the CrossFit Games, which are essentially the world championships of CrossFit. So competition season starts in late February and then typically ended in early August for us. So it's pretty long season. Um, but early in the season, wintertime, January, February, my training's pretty minimal. I typically waited until the Open to really kick things into gear, just because I felt comfortable enough where I was in my fitness level for qualifying. I knew I didn't need to show up in top notch shape for the first stage of qualifying. I could kind of just roll through it. Um, and then regionals, things training kind of picks up there. I would train through regional, so I would never peak for it. As soon as I was done with the Open, I would basically start training for the games. Um, but yeah, then games training, I would say games training would typically last about 3 months. So you're training for 8 or 9 months, but games training, like the really intense, really crazy stuff, was probably 2 to 3 months long. I would train 6 days a week. I took Mondays off. So Mondays were completely off. Just I wouldn't leave the house really. It was just I would eat a ton and do nothing but body work the entire day. So, massages, Theraguns, cupping, scraping, stretching, all that type of stuff. It was an all day thing. And then Thursdays were my low impact days. So I would still do a pretty decent amount of training, but it would just be a swimming workout and a biking workout. So typically, 3 hours or less worth of training, but it was all no barbells, no impact, very, very good on the body. Sorry. And then the other 5 days a week, I would train minimum 2 sessions per day. And then if I had an off site, like if I went to the track or had to do a road bike workout, there would be a third session in there. Each session anywhere from like typically 2 to 3 hours of actual work. But yeah, we don't know what we're training for essentially. Like we know kind of what it's going to involve. We know that anything is allowed. There's no rule. There were no rules on what was allowed, what wasn't allowed. If an events could be 10 seconds long, events could be 4 hours long. We've had to do everything from, lift a barbell 100 times to lifting one barbell as heavy as possible. So anything and everything in between: running, biking, swimming, barbell work, gymnastics work. Yeah, it was pretty intense. So you're trying to train everything, but it's impossible. And then even no matter what you do, you're going to show up to the competition, and they're going to have thought of something that they know nobody else has touched, and they make up a new piece of equipment that they know nobody has touched before. But um, it was a full time, all day, every day, eyes open to eyes closed. The day revolves around it.
It amazes me that athletes don't know what the challenges are going to be until you show up for the event. And I think that's one of the things that makes the CrossFit Games unique. How did you prepare and equip yourself for that, Matt, both physically and I'm sure there's a huge mental component to that,
Yeah.
just not knowing what it is that you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And again, having to prepare for that, not only physically, but also mentally.
Yeah. And so I'll backtrack real quick. Even some of the events we wouldn't find out at all until we were doing the event. So we've had multiple events where, there would be, a half dozen pieces of equipment out on the competition floor. And we were told, you know, as soon as you get to the piece of equipment, your judge will tell you what the movement is you need to do, and then just start doing it. And then they'll tell you when you're done. So they know how many reps you have to do. So now you're playing this guessing game of, all right, well, if I'm moving this barbell and it's 5 reps, I'm going to pace it differently, or I'm going to move differently than if it's 100 reps. So you just kind of take a shot in the dark and hope your strategy holds up. Um, uh, yeah, so training for that, you end up training a lot in the middle. So you may have to run a 40-yard dash. May have to run a marathon. Um, so we end up doing a lot of like 5K training, and then the occasional sprint work. So, we're not going to be the best at the marathon running. We're not going to be the worst at it. We're just trying to be able to complete it competitively. But yeah, you try to be creative in training. You try to think of, okay, we're going to Madison, Wisconsin. What's the landscape look like there? What other sporting events do they host there? So the easy example was when we were doing our research into Madison, we saw that Madison hosts a off-road triathlon every year. So, the swim in the lake, but then it's a mountain bike course and a trail run instead of road course. So, you see the landscape offers that. And so you start training it on the what if or the maybe that they're going to use that as one of the events. Um, but we had events where I remember I showed up and had never touched the implement before, did terribly at it, bought that piece of equipment, took it back home, trained it. I genuinely believed I was one of the best at it. Went from failing the event to being what I thought was incredible at it, and then that piece of equipment never showed up again through my entire career. So there's things like that where it's like, for every 100 things that you're trying or that you're practicing, it's like you hope they show up. You just want to be ready for when they do, but there's no guarantee that they will.
Yeah. What's the bigger life lesson encompassed in that need to be ready? Something, Matt, that we can all apply in our lives, even if we never compete in a CrossFit Games.
Oh, I mean, accepting the things that you can control, and being able to decipher between what you can control and what you can't. I always felt like that was one of my very, very strong suits, was um, being able to look at an event or a situation or just anything and really deciding, like, okay, like what in this scenario do I have control over? Do I have control about how they're responding? Probably not. Do I have control of the referee that I was assigned? Probably not. Like, I have control over none of these things. What do I have control over? My effort, my attitude, how I approach this workout, how I pace it. Um, So stuff like that, and with CrossFit, with it being the unknown, events don't get announced. We don't know what they are leading in. You don't know what you're training for. And so you'll see a lot of people fall victim to the what if game. Like, oh, what if they make us run a marathon? What if they do that? What if they do that? And it's like, well, what if leprechauns are real and they show up on the competition? It's like, why are we wasting time playing this what if game? Like, as soon as they tell us what is required or what the competition is or what we have to train for, well, then I'll start worrying about it. But getting yourself into a tizzy in your own mind about letting your imagination run wild, that's kind of a recipe for disaster. So, um, really focusing on the task at hand, because a lot of the events too, we've never done them. It's um, a lot of the workouts are never repeated. They're brand new, or the terrain is brand new. So even something as simple as you're standing at the bottom of the hill, you know what the workout is, and the workout ends at the top of the hill. So it ends with a foot race up the hill. And you're like, is this 200 meters? Is that 400 meters? Is that a 10% grade or 20% grade? I don't know. Um, so you just kind of have to fall back on your experience and trust it, and control what you have control over, and not get worried about all the outside variables that are happening.
And what do you see happening at the games? Do you notice that certain athletes are handling that better than others? Do
Oh,
you see
absolutely.
people
Yeah.
sort of getting carried away with the what ifs, or trying to guess about what's going to happen rather than just sort of, I guess you probably don't sit waiting patiently, but whatever the opposite of that is, not expending your energy thinking
Yeah.
about something that might not happen?
Yeah, it was really interesting, especially once I was a couple years into it and kind of got to know a lot of these competitors, because it's a lot of the same faces that show up every year. So we get to know each other, and we kind of know personalities and stuff, and I always found it so interesting seeing how different personalities deal with stress. Like there were some that it was comical to me. As I knew, as soon as they started getting chatty, as soon as they were just going nonstop, I'm like, oh, they're nervous. Or the guys that can't sit down, you see them in the back and they're just constantly pacing, pacing, pacing. It's like, hey man, we got 2 hours before the event goes. Like, you should sit down. You're going to wear out your legs. Um, yeah, so you see how different people react to that, and some of them you kind of feed into it. They're your competitors. You want to get that edge on them, whether it's physical or mental. Um, but yeah, I really tried to focus on, as soon as the event was done, I would get out of my competition clothes. So you get out of the sweaty uniform and just like into street clothes, like sweatpants, dry, and it was almost like that was kind of the same as like putting on a suit going to work. As soon as you do up that tie, you're like, okay, like I'm in work mode now. I'm going to show up to a boardroom. I know the types of conversation I'm going to have. And I just felt like whenever I had my competition uniform on, or, just the compression and the shoes laced up super tight, it was like, that's keeping my body in that fight mode. And so as soon as I was done competing, I would try to like just change and just relax, try to get away from the other competitors, get into a quiet space, and just turn off. Like, try not to think about the next event that's happening in 2 hours. It's like, nope, the event's happening in 2 hours, whether I think about it or not. So, all the preparation is done. All the studying for the test is done. If I'm trying to figure something out right now, it's too late. That's like studying the night before an exam. So it was just trusting the capabilities and trying to stay calm through it all.
How did you find it as time went on? So you started was 2014 the first time you entered the games?
Yeah, so my first year competing in the CrossFit season was 2013, and I
2013.
did, and I
Okay.
didn't qualify. So I made it to regionals, didn't qualify past regionals, and then 2014 was my rookie season at the CrossFit Games.
Yeah. So you finished second in 2014, second in
Yep,
2015, and then you won it 5 years in a row.
correct. Yep.
Tell us. about that evolution through those 7 years, or even those 8 years? Did it get
Yeah.
easier as you went on? Did you notice things, and did you have a competitive advantage? I mean, obviously, over somebody coming in as a rookie doing it for the first time, you probably did. But what was that like as you got into the fourth, fifth years? You had a couple wins under your belt, and you were the defending champion. I'm sure
Yeah.
there are positive aspects to that, but you're also the guy that people are trying to beat, right?
Oh
Too. So
yeah. Yeah, of
there's
course.
different sides to
Um,
it.
yeah. So, um, yeah, I always said it never got easier, but it got simpler. Like what I did wasn't easy, but it was very simple. It's you wake up, you do everything you can on a daily basis over and over again to be the best you can. It's a pretty simple plan. Um, but I kind of set up some things in my life to allow that simplicity to even be an option. So, intentionally never had kids, intentionally never had a job. I I wouldn't leave my house or I wouldn't leave like my hometown for months at a time when I was training. Like traveling got cut out completely. So every single day when I was training looked almost identical. It revolved around my sleep. Like even my sleep was set up to be ideal. Having a cooling pad on the mattress, having an AC cranked, having certain blankets, having a bedtime, having a certain alarm clock that helps you wake up better. Um, so even the sleep was choreographed to help my performance. So very simple, um, but monotonous. You're kind of willingly being bored or willingly miserable because you're not hanging out with friends, you're not going out to eat, you're not staying up late, you're not. It's training. That's all you do all day, every day. So, and then the people in my life allowed for that very simple lifestyle. So, I had my business partner now, but at the time he was my manager, agent, friend. He took everything business related, any contracts, anything business, any scheduling, he did that. And then, my at the time girlfriend, now wife, mother of my kids, Sammy, she she did everything house related. So, when I woke up, when I say like I was concerned about training and that's about it, that was it. Sammy was basically like a personal chef for me. She made a career out of it, but I was eating 9,000 plus calories a day. Like that in itself is a part-time job.
Right.
Just eating it, never mind preparing it all too.
that's
So
that's exactly what I was going to say. That eating 9,000 calories is definitely a part-time job, but
yeah,
the
and now
preparation is as
add in
well.
the fact that I'm 5'6" and 190 pounds. Like you see some of the strong men, you see like Thor and Brian Shaw eating 10,000 calories, and it's like, yeah, that fits. You're 6'8", you're 400 pounds. Whereas for me, my caloric intake was just because I was burning so much. Got it tested and found out I was way malnourished in the early years, and so in the science lab with the oxygen mask, and they're drawing blood every 3 minutes to figure out how many calories you're burning and what's your lactate threshold and all that stuff. So I had the environment around me to set up that lifestyle where I could be singularly focused on this one thing day in and day out. Um, and then, so 2014 was my rookie year at the games. I got second place. 2015, second place again. And so 2014, I was over the moon. I was so excited. I went in with zero expectations. I didn't know what the weekend was going to be, anything. And then I ended up landing on the podium and I'm doing backflips. I couldn't believe it. And then come 2015, I had the expectation in my head that I'm going to win. I had first place from the year before. He had retired. I'm second place. So I was like, dude, I got this thing in the bag. And ended up not. I ended up losing by a handful of points. I'm not sure, but I know it came down to the final workout. It came down to first place and second place. Whoever won that workout, it didn't matter if we finished 20th and 21st. whoever finished above the other guy was going to win. And he edged me out. He got the win. And so now I'm looking at it. I get back home the year prior, same medal, same results, and I'm ready to throw a party. A year later, same medal, same results, and I'm like depressed. I am like in the ditch about it. I'm gutted. And so after enough time of that, I'm just like, just being down on myself, I just locked myself in a room with a notepad and just kind of like was ask myself like why am I upset? What is different than last year? Why do I have different emotions this year than I did last year for the exact same result? And after a couple hours and just like scribbling on paper, I came to the conclusion that it wasn't the results that were bothering me. It was the lead up to it. In 2015, I had it in my head that I was going to win, and I cut every corner the entire year. Training was terrible, inconsistent. My nutrition was terrible. My sleep schedule was all over the place. And what really bugged me was I knew that 2015 medal didn't reflect what I was capable of. I knew I was better than that. I knew I could do more than that. And so I was trying to put my finger on, well, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? What was the final fork in the road of the option of you could win or you could get second? What was that? Like, it bugged me. I was like, I was so close to being on top of the podium. I was like, this could have been one night of staying up too late. This could have been one bad meal that was the deciding factor that finally came down to it. And it kept me up at night. Like, what was it? What was the deciding factor? And I just finally went like, there's too many variables to calculate which one was the one. And so I just went, I'm going to fix all of them. At the time I had just started dating, Sammy, my now wife. So, I was still living alone, like we were dating distance, and I just made the decision. I was like, all right, for one season, I'm not going to compromise on a single thing. I looked at it like, okay, it's going to be 8 months start to finish of like hard training. And I'm sure you can have some things where, you think back to an event that happened and you feel like it was a month ago, but then you realize it was a year ago. And you're like, holy, like that year went by so fast. And I just went like, okay, that's what's going to happen here. I'm going to not compromise on a single thing for 1 year. And if I get to the end of the year and I hated it, I never have to do it again. I can quit. But I knew if I don't sacrifice a single thing for the entire year, no matter what the results are, whether they're first place or 50th place, I'm going to be proud of those results. And through all that note writing, that was kind of the overarching theme was like, as long as I'm proud of the effort that I put in, I'm going to be proud of the results I get. And so I knew for the 2015, I was not proud of the effort I put in. I wasn't proud of the training. I wasn't proud of how I competed. And so then my whole goal shifted to then just making myself proud, leaving the gym every day, proud of the effort I put in. And once I started following those guidelines, then I compete in the 2016. I win. I won by the largest margin of victory ever in the sport. And so that's when I went like, oh, okay. Like, one, I wasn't miserable for the 8 months. I liked it. And I got the results I wanted. I'm proud of the results I got. So every year after that, I just kind of doubled down, kept the things that worked, literally every year after I would compete. I would take a week off, before I made any decisions, but at the end of every season, I didn't even know if I would be competing the following season. I wanted to give it a week to, get rested, let the body not be sore, kind of lick my wounds. And then have the conversation with Sammy, have the conversation with O'Keefe of like, hey, are we signing up for this thing again? Because it's not just my life on hold. It's Sammy sacrificing a lot. O'Keefe was sacrificing a lot, but Yeah, after that first year, I got the results that I liked, and I just went, okay, let's run it back again and again and again.
And it obviously worked very successfully. Matt, you're obviously very intentional about how you live your life. And I'm curious, what drives you? Like at the core underneath, what is it that drove you to become CrossFit Games champion 5 consecutive times, which nobody has done before
You,
that?
I'm sure this is the same as the weightlifting scenario of like what kept me in weightlifting, and yeah, it was a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But I would say the overarching, like the big theme was me just deciding what story do I want to tell when I'm 60. You know,
Mm.
do I want to tell my kids like, oh yeah, I did that competition a couple times, I was okay at it. Um, or do I want to like get everything out of this experience that I can? Do I want to just ride this thing until the wheels fall off? Create some incredible opportunities for myself, for my family, travel the world, have these experiences. Um, and then also know, like, figure out what I'm capable of. It's, that was definitely one of my favorite things of competing and doing that. It's like you're pushing your body to the physical edge. Um, and you're probably more pushing it to the mental edge, and it feels like the physical edge. But once I would kind of find that place, the discomfort in the comfortable place. I don't know if that makes sense. But really finding what your body can push. And so for me, it was the rowing machine. That was the staple in my training, and I really enjoyed repeating workouts. So in CrossFit, it's like a big no to repeat workouts. You're supposed to be constantly varied, something different every day. I really like repeating workouts because then I can use that as a measuring stick. I can use it as, did I get better from last time? Yeah, I have data that proves it. And so for myself, I really like the rowing machine because it was low impact, so it was pretty easy on the body. Um, it has a digital display, so there's no opinion in the matter. So if I'm doing 1,000-meter repeats, there's no opinion on if I'm doing better this time than last time. It's a fact. Like your pace is displayed, your times are displayed, and it was a very safe place. You know, if you're going for a 1 rep max or a new PR with a barbell movement, there's a lot of force, there's some outside, there's some danger, like the barbell could fall if you're doing ring muscle ups, you could fall off the rings, stuff like that. With rowing, if I hit my physical limit and fail, I'm not falling, I'm just kind of tipping off the side of the rower and laying down. So that was my place of comfort or my place of safety. And I would do the same workouts. There's one workout I would do it probably 3-4 times a year, every year, and it is a miserable workout on the C2 rower. Um, and the first time I do it to the second time, I'm shaving off 2 seconds off my split time. Then the third time I do it, I'm shaving off a half second, and then a quarter second, and then by the end of it, I'm looking at shaving off tenths of seconds over a 20-minute workout. So you're getting everything you can. So I like that of the time before you thought you were at your limit. And then you're like, okay, well, I survived. 10 minutes after that workout, I was up drinking water, hanging out with my buddies. It was fine. So apparently, I did have a little bit left. I did have a little bit more. And so by repeating that over and over, I was really able to find what I truly thought was my physical limit. Because I've now done this specific workout, 40 times, 50 times through my career. And I know the physical feeling. I know the emotional feeling at every point in that workout. So every time I was able to push it a little bit more, a little bit more. And then once I was able to, in that safe setting, figure out what my limitations are, what my capabilities are, and now I can apply that sensation of, all right, how much physical pain can I actually deal with? And now I can go apply that to the new workouts that I've never experienced before, where fear or emotion are going to rise up because it's unfamiliar. Whereas now it's like, no, I know my breathing rate. I know I can hold my heart rate at 200 plus for however many minutes long. So it just provided that place of comfort, that place of familiarity a little bit more.
You talked about being comfortable in discomfort, and it seems like you really thrive on pushing yourself to the limit, on finding out just what you can do, and then striving to do more, whatever the exercise is, whether it's rowing or, as you talked about, translating that, or shifting that concept and that energy
Hmm.
into really everything that you were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the root of it all is just fear based. Like that was a big
Or
fear of mine
adrenaline, one of the two.
if I'm training by myself, like the whole 2015 season, I thought I was the best. And so I trained as if I was looking over my shoulder at people behind me. And then I show up to the competition, everyone was right there with me, and it created this panic. And I'm like, I realized I've been resting on my laurels for so long. And then all the preceding seasons, for the most part, I would train by myself, and I would always envision other people beating me. I would always envision someone being better than me. So it came from a place of, fear or insecurity of, like, when you're on the rowing machine by yourself, no one else is around, no music playing. It's hard to find the motivation when you can, it feels like you can taste pennies, but it's just the blood coming up, like the blood from your lungs. So, finding those moments, you need some good motivation. For me, it was just, I always pictured somebody else beating me. I always pictured somebody else being better than me. And so I knew I have to get everything out of this. I need to get every pound out of every lift. I need to get every second out of every split time. So it was just trying to, always pretending, like when you're playing tag when you're a kid and you thought somebody was chasing you, and you never felt like you could run faster when you felt somebody's fingers on the back of your neck. So that's kind of how I trained. I always felt like there was somebody right there chasing me.
Matt, your mantra, hard work pays off, is it's not only a personal philosophy for you, but also the foundation of your business. It's incorporated into the name of your business. Share what that phrase means to you. I love that mantra, and how it shaped your journey to become the fittest man on earth, and why you believe hard work is such a critical component for achieving success in any area of life.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think the first disclaimer is, when I always phrased hard work, I kind of looked at it as just like anything that wasn't enjoyable. It didn't necessarily have to be physically hard. A lot of the stuff that I did in training and in practice was very mentally hard. And so, it's those things. Yeah, it's when you have to put a lot in. When you put no effort in, you get, a gold medal. It's like, all right, whatever. You don't realize that it's the whole process. It's the work leading up to it, and then reflecting back on, man, because I did all that stuff yesterday and the day before, I'm now capable of doing this today. And I just kind of stretched that out over everything I did. Um, and funny enough, that mantra, hard work pays off, it actually came from when I was in university and studying for a class. That's when
Mm.
it, that's when the mantra would get played in my head. I was failing a class, and I wasn't happy with it. And the problem was, I didn't know what I didn't know. Like, I knew so little that I didn't even know what questions to ask. I didn't know where to look to get the information, any of that stuff. And I was just kind of at a point of desperation, going into the final, and it's like, I'm failing the class. I have to ace this thing. I don't have a choice. And it was kind of the same thing of, well, what do I want when I'm 40 years old? Do I want to, because this class was a little bit too hard, required a few hours too many of studying, I never finished my dream of becoming an engineer. Well, no, that seems silly. Like, just one class got in the way. No, I'll just dedicate the time needed. And so I didn't know how to do it. So I just went, okay, I'm just going to cut everything out of my life, and, friends, relationships, everything. And I would just sit in the library, and just the class I was failing, I read the textbook cover to cover. And anything I didn't know, I would jot it down, learn that thing individually, and then go back. Once I read everything individually, I would go back and read the whole thing again, see if it made any more sense. And I just kept telling myself, like, this will pay off. This will pay off. And then over time, the dots start getting connected in the class, and you didn't know how to study, but you just started studying. And then as you're going, you start figuring it out and kind of getting a little bit better with it. And so that's just what I did with CrossFit. I showed up to a competition. I looked at the events I did well in. I looked at the events I did poorly in and went, okay, well, why did I do poorly? And then broke it down. All right. Was it, I wasn't conditioned enough? Was it my technique wasn't good enough? Was it, I didn't have the endurance or the strength, or what was the component? And then break that down. So I'm not just looking at like, all right, I'm not good. I want to get better at ring muscle ups. That doesn't mean I'm just going to go do ring muscle ups until I'm blue in the face. It's, well, what part of the ring muscle up is the bottleneck? What is the limiting factor? Is it my grip strength? Is it my grip endurance? Is it my timing on the turnover? Is it, my technique smooth when I come over to the top? Is it my press out at the top? And so I just took everything that I want to get better at, broke it down into all those different steps, identified what the actual weakness was, not just the overarching movement. And then I would just hammer that until I felt like I was good at it. And then, how you do anything is how you do everything. Once you find a life hack of how to learn, like I did in college, well, you don't forget that life hack. You don't forget that trick. You don't forget it. So now it's like, okay, now I just have to learn how to apply it in a physical setting. So I went from university to, all right, now with CrossFit, how do I apply it? And then as soon as I was done with CrossFit, same thing in the business world of, there's no chance I'm perfect. Thinking that I've gone through without making mistakes would be silly. But it's, you look back at, the end of the quarter or the end of the year at all the different pieces. And it's like, oh, I fucked that one up. And it's like, all right, well, what did I mess up? How can I be better? And so it's just applying the same thing, just at different arenas.
We've talked about hard work, and you and I are definitely in agreement that I always believe that if I'm not working harder than everybody else, then I shouldn't be surprised when I don't achieve what someone else has achieved.
Of
So
course.
hard work for me is it's the table stakes, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the bare minimum that you need to do. What other traits or qualities are essential for someone who wants to achieve at the level you did? Whether we're talking about an elite athlete, a CrossFit athlete, or just somebody achieving or striving to achieve the pinnacle of success in something completely different, maybe even something unrelated to sports.
Yeah, I think so. One piece was what was very eye opening to me was that it, for me with training CrossFit, competing in CrossFit, um, I was shocked at how much work, time, and effort went into stuff outside of the CrossFit gym. So not the physical training. You're looking at the mental training, the sleep schedules, the diet, the body work. It's what are you doing when you're outside of the gym? And I look at that as the same as when I was in university. What are you doing on Saturday and Sunday? It's not just are you paying attention during class and taking good notes. No, are you doing extra stuff on the weekend with training? Are you still continuing some work, even though it's diminishing returns? It's still returns. So are you still capturing those even when you go home? And it can get down to the nitpicky of something as simple as, hey, if you're getting drunk every Friday night, it's now you're hungover on Saturday. Now your body's not working ideally on Sunday. That lack of sleep trickles out. Well, the same is true, maybe not as drastic, but the same is true for just staying up late. It's so it's I don't think everyone realizes how all encompassing it can be, or the people that you see that are the best of the best of the best at their trade. It's very rare that they're done thinking about work or done contributing to their craft when it's not present in front of them. For me, it was an around the clock thing, and I think that was there. I never saw something as worth it or not. It was either a yes or a no. It's not like there would be some benefit, but I'm not going to do it. It's like, no, it's either going to make you better or not. I didn't care by how much. And so it's just like, yeah, zero compromises. It was all in, all consuming.
So that's a pretty strong filter that you had. Either it contributes to what you're trying to accomplish or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then it falls by the wayside. It doesn't get incorporated into your lifestyle. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I held that, like when I was competing, I was very limited on what I would allow myself to do because I knew it was a timestamp. I knew it was a very short window of my life that I was going to be capable of doing stuff like that, have an interest in doing that. Um, so yeah, it was everything. Just trying to think of examples. You're not going out to dinner with friends. You know, even stuff as simple as I like traveling. I like riding my motorcycle. I like all that stuff, but it's nope, you're getting close to competition. You can't ride the motorcycle anymore. You're getting close to competition. I'm careful with opening packages with a knife. It sounds so silly, but I've seen it. I've seen it happen where a competitor cut their thumb like a week before, and everything we do is with the barbells, we use what's called a hook grip. So you need to hold on to your thumb. So like there's like a lot of weight pulling on your thumb, and if you have a cut, one, it's going to hurt, but then two, it's going to bleed on the bar. It's going to get your hand wet. You're going to lose grip. So, I looked at everything like that. Making sure I didn't break a toe a week out from competition, make sure I didn't cut my hand a week out. Even little things like that where yeah, I'm sure 99% of the time I was concerned about those and took action to make sure they didn't happen to me. It would have made no difference. But you don't know which variable is going to be the one that makes the difference. So I just cut them all out.
Yeah. Everything matters, right?
Yeah.
Everything matters. Matt, as you know, our show is called Life Excellence, and I wonder, what does excellence mean to you?
Ooh, man. Like, what does it mean for myself, or like, what's my like definition of it?
Yeah, either or.
Um, I think excellence probably relates pretty heavily to doing everything to the best of your ability. So not half-assing anything or just kind of cutting a corner. Um, yeah, I think doing it to the best of your ability, and I think personal happiness has to factor in there somewhere. It's one of those things. It's even if you're the best in the world at it, but you hate doing it, it's not worth it. Um, so yeah, I think having good people around you, having that good support system, and then making sure that you and the people around you are all giving everything you can. Because I'm confident when I say that if I truly give everything I can and I get a result that's anything other than what I initially set out for, I will still be proud of those results.
That's well said. Matt, your CrossFit days are behind you, certainly from a competition standpoint. What are you most excited about in this season of your life? And where can our listeners and viewers go to learn more about you and the great work that you're doing?
Yeah, I think this chapter of my life, I've kind of stepped back into a bit of a learning phase. Towards the end of my CrossFit career, I was very cemented into my ways and I was very confident that that was the way to do it. But now I'm in a whole new chapter of life. Whether that's looking at it as a business owner, a friend, or a father, I'm a new dad, have a 16-month-old at home, another one on the way. So that's a whole different set of challenges or excitement or however you want to look at it. So putting a ton of effort into trying to create the home life that I see as ideal. Um, been having a ton of fun becoming a student again. I'm a student pilot now, so been taking flying lessons and studying for that for a long time. I actually have a written exam coming up in a couple days. But being a beginner again, being a student again, sitting down and looking at a subject matter and going, I have no idea how to do this or how to get through it or what it means. Um, or like with fatherhood of like how do I deal with people and emotions and all that stuff? And so I'm really putting a lot of effort into trying to learn, like being willing to be a beginner again, asking for advice, asking for other people's experiences all the time. Um, I'm just in such a new chapter of life. It's a ton of fun, but it's unknown, and so you just try to have good people around you, ask plenty of questions, and no matter the circumstances I'm in, just always do the next right thing, and it usually works out pretty well.
Well, you are the fittest man on earth. So I have no doubt that whatever you do, you're going to be great at. And I love that. I love that beginner's mind perspective. And equipped with that and your sort of engineering
Mm-hmm.
background, you'll definitely figure it out. Whether it's flying a plane or parenting two children, which is different than just having one child, as you'll
Oh, I know.
soon
I know.
figure out.
I'm so excited and so nervous at the same time.
It's awesome. Matt, thank you so much for being on Life Excellence. This has been great. It's been an honor to meet and get to know you. And I'm so grateful for our conversation today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is great.
It has been great. Thanks for tuning into Life Excellence. Please support the show by subscribing, sharing it with others, posting about today's show with Matt Fraser on social media, and leaving a rating and review. You can also learn more about me at brianbartes.com. Until next time, dream big dreams and make each day your masterpiece.